Hello everybody, welcome back to Book of Kings, where we discuss topics such as history, religion, philosophy, psychology, culture, and more, and the way that they all interact with one another. Don't forget to like, leave a comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to receive a notification every time I release a new video. Hope you enjoy. The modern nation of Iran has a lengthy ancient history, spanning the course of over 2,500 years. That ancient history witnessed the rise of a world superpower, the likes of which had never been witnessed before, and the spread of the Zoroastrian faith. This great empire would be brought to an end by the conquests of Alexander, resulting in the influence of Greek culture upon Iranian civilization. We would then witness the resurgence of native Iranian culture and the Zoroastrian religion, with Iran becoming the main rival to the Roman Empire. This would be followed by conquest by the Islamic Arabs and the eventual replacement of Zoroastrianism with Islam. We would go on to see the revival of the Persian language and the influence of Iranian culture upon Islamic civilization. Following this, however, Greater Iran would be dealt a colossal blow with the devastating conquests of the Mongols. It was in the aftermath of these Mongol conquests that the seeds of modern Iran would be sown. The once great empire of Turco-Mongol ruler Timur-Lenk would become fractured, and western Iran would be dominated by the Turkic Ak-Koyunlu Confederation. It was within this region that a new power would arise, which would unite the majority of Greater Iran and provide what are considered to be the foundations of modern Iranian history and the modern nation-state of Iran. That power would be the Safavid Dynasty. The Safavid Dynasty would have its origins in the Safaviya or Safavid order, a Sufi order which would come to embrace Shiism. The political and military wing of this order, known as the Qizilbash, would come under the command of Shah Ismail. Shah Ismail would conquer the majority of Greater Iran, defeating the Ak-Koyunlu and what was left of the Timurids, creating the Safavid Empire. It was during the reign of the Safavids that the majority of the population of Iran, which was previously Sunni Muslim, would become adherents of Twelver Shia Islam, albeit largely by forced conversion by Ismail and his successors. The Safavid dynasty was of mixed ethnic origins, with Safavid rulers being of Kurdish, Turkic, Georgian, and Greek origin. However, the Safavids would re-establish Iranian and Persian identity within their domains, being the first empire since the Sassanians to establish the name Iran as the official name of their state. The Safavid Empire would be referred to by historians as one of the gunpowder empires, along with the Ottoman and Mughal empires, which were among the strongest economies of their time. And being the world's leading Shia power, they would come into frequent conflict with the Ottoman Empire, the dominant Sunni power of its time. The Safavid attempts to forcibly convert Sunnis to Shiism in the city of Kandahar in modern-day Afghanistan led to rebellion by the ethnic Pashtuns, who would revolt and create the Hotaki Dynasty. The Hotaki Dynasty would advance into Safavid territory, eventually taking their capital of Esfahan. Meanwhile, the Safavids' arch-rival, the Ottoman Empire, as well as the Russian Empire, would take advantage of the ensuing chaos to invade and conquer territory in the Safavids' west and northwestern regions. In order to prevent the fall of the empire, Safavid general Nader Shah would rise to power and defeat the Hotakis, negotiate an agreement with the Russians, and defeat the Ottomans, regaining Safavid control over its lost territories and even expanding its territory. Nader Shah would be renowned as a military genius, with historians referring to him as the Napoleon of Persia or the Second Alexander. While initially fighting in the name of the Safavids, Nader Shah would create his own dynasty known as the Afsharid Dynasty. The Afsharid Dynasty would be short-lived, effectively coming to an end upon the assassination of Nader Shah. The Safavids would briefly be replaced in power by the Zand tribe of the Iranian-speaking Lur people, who would temporarily use them as puppet rulers until their leader, Karim Khan, was able to consolidate and establish the Zand Dynasty. The Zand Dynasty would be short-lived, reigning for a little over 40 years before being overthrown by the Turkic Qajar tribe, who would establish the Qajar Dynasty. It was under the Qajar Dynasty that Iran would come under the influence of European powers, namely Britain and Russia. It was during this dynasty, with the loss of Iran's territory in the Caucasus to the Russian Empire, that the borders of modern-day Iran would become set. Following the occupation of Iran during World War I by the British, Russian, and Ottoman empires, Commander Reza Khan would stage a coup, effectively ending the Qajar dynasty. He would then declare himself king, or Shah of Iran, changing his name to Reza Shah Pahlavi, thus beginning the Pahlavi Dynasty, the last imperial dynasty in Iranian history. Reza Shah would attempt to modernize Iran, attempting to develop Iran into a modern secular state. Reza Shah placed a heavy emphasis on nationalism, seeking to unite Iran around Persian identity and culture. His attempts at modernization were met with strong resistance, particularly among the religious clergy. It was during the reign of Reza Shah that all foreign nations were asked to refer to the country in formal correspondence by its native name of Iran, as opposed to the name Persia, which was commonly used by foreign nations. Reza Shah's reign would meet its end with the arrival of World War II. Reza Shah had declared his neutrality in the war and would attempt to ensure that no major power had too much influence over Iranian affairs. In doing this, he would maintain relations with various major world powers, such as Great Britain, the United States, the Soviet Union, as well as Nazi Germany. This did not sit well with the Allied powers, and Great Britain and the Soviet Union would invade and occupy Iran during World War II. They would put his young son, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, in power as Shah of Iran, and he would prove to be a loyal ally of the West. Roughly 10 years into his rule, Mohammad Reza would face the first major challenge to his reign in 1951. At the time, Iran was a constitutional monarchy, having both a monarchy under the Shah as well as a parliamentarian system. The Prime Minister of Iran was a man named Mohammad Mossadegh. Mossadegh sought to enact sweeping economic and political reforms in Iran, including limiting the power of the monarchy, while increasing the power of the Majlis, or parliament. Mossadegh would go on to nationalize Iran's oil fields, then owned by the Anglo-Persian Oil Company, the British company which would later be known as British Petroleum, or BP. Additionally, he would increase his powers and limit those of the Shah. The nationalization of Iran's oil fields would result in the ire of the West, with Great Britain imposing crushing sanctions on Iran. It would also result in a foreign coup led by the CIA, whereby Mossadegh would be removed from power and placed under house arrest for the rest of his life. The Shah would then return to Iran, this time with a stronger and more forceful grip on power and closer relations with the United States. The Shah would continue the objective begun by his father of modernizing Iran, enacting sweeping economic and social reforms. These would earn the dissatisfaction of various sectors of society, such as the Bazaris, or merchant class, communists, and the religious clergy. This would all come to a head in 1979, when widespread mass protests would break out throughout Iran, culminating in the Iranian Revolution. One figure would rise to the head of this movement, and that was the Shia cleric Ruhollah Khomeini, commonly known as Ayatollah Khomeini. While initially publicly championing democratic institutions, Khomeini would develop his doctrine of rule of the jurist, which posited that in the absence of the hidden final Shia imam who would return during end times, those most fit to rule would be the most learned among the Shia clergy. This would form the basis for the political system which Khomeini would put in place upon the Shah being driven out of Iran, resulting in Iran's current government, the Islamic Republic of Iran, with Khomeini ruling as supreme leader. Khomeini was known for his fiery rhetoric, which criticized major world powers, referring to the United States as the Great Satan and the Soviet Union as the Lesser Satan. particularly for what he viewed as the U.S.'s imperialistic foreign policy, including America's involvement in Iranian domestic affairs. Tensions between the two nations would come to a head with the Iranian hostage crisis, in which the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, Iran, would be stormed and its members held captive for over a year. Khomeini would also express criticism of the governments of other Islamic nations, calling for similar uprisings to occur throughout the Muslim world. This would earn the animosity of various regional powers, namely Saddam Hussein of Iraq. Saddam would invade Iran and wage a brutal war referred to as the Iran-Iraq War, which would last nearly 10 years and would inevitably result in a stalemate between the two countries. Khomeini would eventually pass away and would be succeeded by the current supreme leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei. The following years of the Islamic Republic would be characterized by continued hostile relations between the United States and Iran, resulting in crippling economic sanctions. Relations would appear to take a turn for the better with the signing of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, commonly known as the Iran Deal, by the administration of U.S. President Barack Obama and Iranian President Hassan Rouhani in 2015. Relations would sour again and hit their lowest point in years under the administration of Donald Trump, who would withdraw the United States from the Iran deal, reimpose sanctions, and carry out the assassination of top Iranian general Qasem Soleimani, bringing Iran and the U.S. to the brink of war. The potential for improved relations have become a topic of conversation once again with the election of current U.S. President Joe Biden, who has expressed potential willingness for the United States to re-enter the JCPOA. However, only time will tell what the result will be. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Talk to you next time. Thank you for watching. This has been another Book of Kings video. Don't forget to like, leave a comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to receive a notification every time I release a new video.